this. Oh, Rachel's got it. Thank you.
So as long as you stay muted, you will not be recorded, so don't worry about that. And please do make use of the chat box. Davith and I will be in the chat throughout the evening to answer any questions and to share links to read more about all of the books that you're hearing about. In fact, we're going to put a link in there in a moment. We have posted a blog post, Davith just did, that lists all of the books that we're planning to talk about tonight, that our guests are planning to talk about tonight. So you can follow along there if you like, and you can also go back to that link after the fact to order whichever books you want to get. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for your ongoing support of Northshire and independent bookselling and other independent businesses near you. And Davith, why don't you take us away?
All right, well, thanks so much. So this is, as I said, this is the blog post. Please click on that. It'll stay there. You can likewise when you go to northshire.com, it's notes from the Shire. That'll be a permanent link to this link, to this blog. And so our first guest is from WW Norton. This is Suzette Ciancio. She's lovely. I cannot wait to hear what you have to suggest, Suzette.
Okay, hi. I have a bunch of books that are a mix of different things, and I'll start right off with Gods at Play by Tom Callahan. This book came out in September. It's cloth, it's $26.95, and it's really short chapters about different sports people and Tom's reactions with them. There's Muhammad Ali and Shirley Povich, and just all sorts of different people with funny aspects, different things about the people when Tom first met them and all the different sports that they did. There's something for everyone, and it's for people who like sports but are not fanatics, such as me. It's for people who know a lot about different sports but want to read other stories. And so you can pick it up and read the chapter on Muhammad Ali and put it down and pick it up, and there's another thing on golf, and then there's some mountain climbing, and there's of course football and basketball. It covers all the sports, chess. It's a really, really fun book to read. And unfortunately, we were out of stock for a lot of the holiday season. So if you were shopping then, you might have missed it. So I highly recommend this. It's a really fun book to read. My next one is The Man Who Ate Too Much, about James Beard. It came out in October. It's cloth. It's $35. And it's a story about a man we all know, not so much about him as a chef and all his cooking. It's about his life from childhood on through the rest of his life. It talks about his identity. Well, he really didn't identify as a gay man. He was outed in college and shamed, and how he'd always liked to cook, and how he learned how to cook and talk and travel and eat. We all know that he loved to eat. One of my favorite cookbooks is a very old one of James Beard's. And you also learn all the different cooking personalities and what California was like back in the early part of the last century, and how his mother ran a boarding house, and the friends that he made, and how he went different places. It's a really, really fascinating book. You don't have to like cooking, but you also don't have to be a cook to read it. You just have to like to read about people and find about lives. I mean, no one ever talked, ever, even in his obituary in the New York Times, about the fact that he was gay, because it was just something he put off to the side. And part of that was the times that he lived in. But you find so much about his sense of humor, and how he would take recipes from one cookbook and redo them and make another cookbook, and how he got caught out on that, and how he held grudges and who held grudges about him. So it's a really, really lively book. And I haven't quite finished it yet, but I really am enjoying it. My next book, I need David to show the cover, The Shadow King by Maza Mengesti. He doesn't see it. Okay. it's in paperback now. It come out in a hardcover. Oh, now we're going to see it. There it is. It's The Shadow King. It came out in September. It was a Booker Prize. It's a story, a very surprising story about Mazza Mengesti's great grandmother. She found an old picture of her in battle clothes, not what we think of as uniforms, but in battle clothes. And the whole story is based on the life of her grandmother, who, along with many other Ethiopian women, were soldiers in the battle against the invasion in 1935 by Mussolini's troops. And it talks about how they invaded Ethiopia and how the people resisted and fought back. Her great grandmother was actually a slave to some country people. The title comes from the fact that Haile Selassie had left the country ostensibly to stay safe. I think he was a coward. They happened to find a picture of him that closely resembled a man in one of their villages, and they made clothes and dressed him up like Haile Selassie and would slip him in and out of the woods and the fields so that the Italians, who thought they'd covered everything, would see him and be afraid that he had come back and he would have a great big army. And then they would show him, parade him around from a distance so that all the Ethiopians would see him and think he's come back and will fight. I mean, eventually Mussolini's troops stayed, but it's based on a true story. It's so well written. You can feel the red dust in the fields and slipping in and out of the woods and how they lived. And I kept thinking, with all the white clothes they were wearing on the horses to make the Shadow King look like Mussolini, how did they ever keep it clean? Because they didn't have washing machines. And there's all this red dust, and she's a magical writer. You will just love this. And this is paperback for $17.95. And now I'm back to me, David, with The Dead Are Arising. It's the life of Malcolm X. The author died, Les Payne, before he was able to completely finish it. His daughter Tamara had been working with him, and she had been doing a lot of research. So she helped finish the book. It's a lot about Malcolm X that you don't know in most of his stories, about Malcolm X as a small boy. There's a lot that takes place in about 100 pages, take place in the Boston area and in Hartford, Connecticut. And it did win a National Book Award this spring. It came out in October, and it's $35, and it's really, really fascinating. And there are, of course, I often look for photos. And so there are a lot of photos in the middle that you will see, but it's so interesting. All the things that you think you've learned in history books and that you think you've read in the newspapers, and there's always all this hidden stuff, and that's what you find out. And it's really, really well written and fun to read. My next book is Ordinary People, which I don't have the cover for. If David could just put it up quickly. It's a paperback. It came out 3 years ago, and I just fell in love with it. It's about two couples of color in London. The hardcover was red, which happened to be the kitchen of one of the couples, that made me think I would repaint my kitchen. But anyway, it's paper. It's $16.95. It's their lives as they interact with all their people, they're friends. They go on vacation, raising children, trying to be a person of color in neighborhoods where people don't always want you. There's a lot of London and different neighborhoods, and an ending that I wasn't expecting. It's a little explosive. I'm not going to share anything, but it's really, really well written. And I just fell in love with it when I first read it. I was so happy it came out in paperback. And so this one is out, and you can buy it from Northshire now. And now I have Trust by our, we hope to be confirmed, new Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg. This also is an early book in October, and it's cloth, and it's $17.95. And he's talking about how we need to have trust again in our elected officials and in our government, and how they need to get us to trust them, because that way we can all work together. I got to meet him at a supper for his first book with us, The Shortest Way Home. He's really, really smart. He's very well spoken, and his writing, you really feel like he's talking right to you. And it's a delightful, delightful book. And it's really, really at the right time to make us think about trusting people again. My next book is a kid's book, but I love it. It's by Kenji Lopez Alt. It's called Every Night is Pizza Night. Kenji wrote a book for us called The Food Lab, which is probably one of our best-selling cookbooks ever. And this is about his daughter, who insisted that every night was pizza night, and she didn't want to try new foods. And that just broke Kenji's heart, because he's always trying new things. So it's all about how he's going to teach her to find new foods. And I love it also because I could eat pizza pretty much every night. And at the end, we have the little girl in the book is Pipo. We have her pizza and how to make the dough. And it's really easy. So if you like pizza and you're tired of buying the dough, this is a great book to buy and read with your kids, your grandchildren, your nieces, your nephews, the kids next door, if you're friends with them, and have a great pizza night. And staying with food, we have Pie Camp by Kate McDermott. This is the third book she's done for us. She did The Art of the Pie and then Everyday Home Cooking. And this is really a very intensive course in a book on how not to be afraid of making pie dough. I have a pie dough recipe from my grandmother's cookbook that I've been using for 30 some years. And I tried Kate's, and I've now done it, maybe 7 or 8 times. The pie crust is so good. I want to make pies all the time. And she's got sweet and savory. She has you all the different ways that you can make your pie, gluten-free, regular. She's of course got photos, and I actually was able to do a Zoom pie camp with her. We all made the dough ahead of time, and she showed us how to do it. And it's delightful and it's fun. I gave it as Christmas presents to some friends, but I wanted to make sure I kept my own because I had so much fun doing it. And now I'm thinking, well, we could have a savory pie for dinner. And the more you do the pie dough, the easier it gets. So if you're a novice, if you'd like to try, if you know someone who's really good, and you can give it to them and then they can make the pie for you. But she's wonderful, and this is a really great book. And my next book is Bright and Dangerous Objects. This one came out also in October. It's paper, it's $15.95. It's not really science fiction, although it's set in the future, and we are planning to go to Mars, to live on Mars in this book. And the main character is a woman who's been practicing to go to Mars. They practice the dark and the loneliness by going very, very deep sea diving in these little bathyspheres sort of thing. And not only does she want to be an astronaut, she's in a very involved relationship and she gets pregnant. He's very excited about it. She's not so sure. She gets picked for a special group of people that are going to be going to Mars. And there's a woman who's very pregnant there. And so they're talking about going to Mars in space. There's a little bit of what I thought was Brexit, but it's definitely in the future. It's not in the now. And so I think of it as partly science fiction because we are talking about going to space to a place where we haven't gone, but it's also very grounded in the here and now in Britain. And it was just so much fun to read. It's from our affiliate Tin House, and I highly recommend this one. Now I have something from Art. It's called Truth Bomb. And it's cloth. It's $34.95. Inspiration from the mouths and minds of women artists. And so you have on one page a quote from an artist, and on the next page you have the art. And there are people that you know and people that you don't know. And one of the pages, a truth bomb is, and it tells you a little bit about what they think it is. And then you have the eyes. So it's very, it's not traditional art. It's not Monet and it's not Beth Morisot, but it's just fascinating. And it's one of these great books that you can leave on your coffee table or your bedside, although I haven't read it in bed because it's a little heavy. And you just pick it up and put it down and read about something. And then my problem is now that we always have a device with us, if I don't know something, I go look it up, and then I've gone into the rabbit hole about that artist, and I come back and I read something else. And it's so different from anything I normally read that I'm just having so much fun with it. It's a great gift book. Valentine's Day is coming up. It's a great book for yourself if you want to learn something new about art. I just have so much fun with that. Okay, my next book is, I actually did print out the cover of this, so I hope you can see it. It's my autobiography of Carson McCullers by Jen Chaplin. It was a National Book Award finalist in hardcover. It's now in paperback. It's $16.95. And Jen Chaplin has started studying various Southern artists, and she starts studying Carson McCullers. She does a writing stint in Carson McCullers' house, and she starts writing like Carson and trying to imagine that she's Carson and acting like Carson. And then she comes back out of it and talks more about why Carson McCullers means so much to her and what her writing is like and how there's more to her than just the guest at the wedding. And it's not particularly a Southern book. She's writing about an artist who lived in the South and how it shaped her, but also how reading Carson McCullers and all the research she was doing started affecting her and how it changed her writing. And it's really, really good reading. I just lay down on the sofa and read. It was wonderful. So my next book, and I printed this out. This might be a little easier. It's The House on Vesper Sands. It's just come out last week, actually. It's hardcover, $26.95. And it's Sherlock Holmes meets a modern detective that would have been on a mystery show. There's a very mysterious woman at the beginning who's working for someone, and it turns out that she's got something embroidered in her skin, and we're not sure what it is. And then she jumps out the window. And it turns out that there's some women all over London where this takes place that have jumped out of windows, and they've all had this mysterious embroidery on their skins. And the two people that are really researching this is a bumbling guy who really came to London to ask his uncle for money because he can't wait for it in trust to come because he's starving now. And he convinces two policemen that he's actually a detective. And so he starts helping them with this, and he falls in love with this one woman he finds, and we don't know what kind of women they are, and we don't know what this whole is this a ring of something? I mean, we really don't know anything, and we keep getting all these little clues, and it gets eerier and eerier and eerier. And I won't give the ending away, but everybody that's read it so far has just absolutely loved it. It's really, really fun. My next book is a book that just published this week in bookstores. It's The Doctor's Blackwell. And I always knew about Elizabeth Blackwell because she was our first MD in the United States. And it turns out it's the Doctor's Blackwell because she had a younger sister who also became a doctor. And it's Janice Nomura is the author, and she wrote a great book for us, The Daughters of the Samurai. And although it took place just after the Civil War, I kept thinking of it as something that was taking place now. I kind of forgot where we were. And she does this with Elizabeth and her sister. Elizabeth quit practicing fairly early in her career when she got there. And it turned out that she was getting more experience in London in doing an operation, and some infected liquid got in her eye, and she eventually lost her eye. And as a surgeon, you really shouldn't be using your instruments on people if you've only got one eye. So she went into administration, and her sister kept going. They opened the first hospital it was actually for indigent women and children in New York. And so you learn all about what the country was going through. They did this job because they didn't want to stay at home and just be housewives. Elizabeth thought she had the divine right to do whatever she wanted to do, and she decided medicine was where she was going to go. And you get so angry at all the obstacles put in her way. I mean, it was the 1800s, but it's a really fascinating book, and it makes you think a lot differently about people who are the first to do something, and what we take for granted now that they're women doctors, how hard it was for them to do that. And it's wonderful. It brought women to medicine and medicine to women in a way that had never been done before. Then I have a very small little paperback. It's coming out in 3 weeks. It's $15.95, and it takes place, it's a traveling salesman and his daughter, and it's told from the point of view of the daughter, who's about 7. It takes place in Argentina, but when I was reading it, I kept thinking about Paper Moon with Brian O'Neill and Tatum O'Neill, and how she was in the car with him as he was a traveling salesman, and what it was like. This really takes place in the 60s, so it's newer than Paper Moon, but it's this charming little book about how she sees how people go and sell, and of course it's men selling, and how she sometimes is helping her dad because she's an adorable little 7-year-old, or how they're doing the invoices and what they do with lunches. And it's a whole different way of thinking about traveling salesmen. And it's very philosophical while you're reading it. And I loved it. It was such a fun book. My last book is not coming out until April, but it's The 5 Wounds by Kirsten Valdez Quaid. She won the National Book Critics Circle Award for her Night at the Fiestas, which was short stories. This one is taken from one of the stories, A Night at the Fiestas. And it starts, it's in New Mexico. It's a little town in the middle of nowhere. And it starts out Holy Week. Amadio, one of the main characters, has been picked to play Jesus in the Passion Play. And he's somebody who never finishes what he starts. And he and his girlfriend got married because she was pregnant. And when his daughter was little, she left with her mother left with her because they weren't getting along. And he's trying to do the right thing. He's going to make his great uncle proud of him and his mother proud of him. His mother, meanwhile, is with a new boyfriend in Las Vegas, trying to start a new life. She discovers she has she has really, really bad headaches, so bad that she goes to the doctor in Las Vegas and she's got a brain tumor and it's inoperable. So she drives home, dumps the boyfriend, and is trying to figure out how she's not going to tell anyone until she actually has to. When she comes home, Amadio's daughter, who is 17 and unmarried and pregnant, is on the doorstep. She had an argument with her mother. She's come to stay with her grandmother, who isn't there. She and Amadio are kind of going around like this because they don't get along too well together. As the story progresses, it's a whole year. You see the family coming together, falling apart. Amadio's mother gets sicker and sicker. The baby gets born, how the baby really, the son really brings everyone together, so that by the end of the story, it's not necessarily a happy ending, but it's hopeful. It's very, very hopeful. And I thought, there's got to be another story about what happens when Amadio's grandson grows up and everything that he's done. You keep thinking about people you know while you're reading it, and the scenery. New Mexico, so beautiful, but they're in this dumpy little town in the middle of nowhere. And part of the story, the intrigue is also you're in a small town. Everybody knows you. Everybody knows all your secrets. And they have a hard time changing their mind if it turns out that you can make something better of yourself or help your family. And I just really love this. So look for this in April. And those are my books from Norton and Affiliates. And thank you very much.
Suzette, thank you so much. That was fantastic. All right. Well, next we have Ellen Pyle from Macmillan. Ellen, take us away.
Okay, unmuting. Sharing screen. I'm new to this, people. And I'm sharing. Okay. And it's backwards. Uh-oh. Well, am I starting backwards? Let's see. I'm sorry. We actually did have a technical practice, and I don't know how I ended up backwards. Okay, let's see from the beginning. Let's try that. Nope, there it is. Okay. Figured it out. All right. Hi. So I have a collection of books that appeal to me specifically that I thought might appeal to others. And one of them is actually, I'm from Macmillan Publishers. Hi, Ellen Pyle. Anyway, I'm going to talk about my favorite diet book author, who is an MD and also kind of a scientist. Am I supposed to do something else? Yes, okay, good. Who really knows food inside and out and the best way to eat and the best foods to eat. And he won my heart with his first book. Dr. Greger won my heart with How Not to Die. I thought, well, that's just a stupid title, but it's gone on to sell, you know, thousands and hundreds of thousands of books, and people, I think, are turning on to his common sense. It's not a lose weight kind of diet. It's a get healthy kind of diet. It's a good for the earth kind of diet because you're eating all natural foods. And so he followed up with a couple of cookbooks. And so How Not to Diet is his latest cookbook. And it's a tome, yes it is, but he goes through and explains to you why you're eating what you're eating and how to combine foods and all that kind of thing. And it's not difficult. I did it and I felt better immediately. So I really like Dr. Gregor. And then on the other side of that coin, I finally made, as probably millions of us have, our first sourdough starters. And she's really good. I really like my little starter. I made a loaf like this big the first time. And of course I had to get einkorn flour and all that kind of thing. But this is a simpler method for that little girl that you started. And she's bubbling away on your counters and in your refrigerators. I just know it. Anyway, it's how to make other things than bread or rolls. And you can make basil pasta, for instance, which I'm going to try, and flatbreads and that kind of thing. So I think it's how to expand your sourdough craft, so to speak. Love this book. And it's available now. And also How Not to Diet is available now. And down a different track, The House in the Cerulean Sea, now in paperback. And it's set on a magical island, and it's a love story, bar none. Readers have loved this. Is one of booksellers' favorites. And V.E. Schwab, I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she writes a wonderful series called It Simply Perfect, which I think was very nice of her to do. I seem to be out of order here. Anyway, so from one of the booksellers that gave it a great review, opening it is like receiving a warm hug. I laughed, I grinned, I wept, mostly out of joy. I read this at a time when I wasn't even aware that it's exactly what I needed, but I couldn't put it down and found myself skimming over my favorite scenes even after I'd finished. And this particular bookseller said, and I can't wait to reread my favorite parts. And in all of the bookseller reviews and the reviews that I've read about it, people have said, I can't wait to reread. So that's usually an indication of something that's beautifully written and lovable. Next is a book that I loved. It's Uncanny Valley is like how we feel about robots who are able to be humanistic in their actions and in the way that we perceive them. Well, this young woman, Anna Wiener, she was in publishing. She was an assistant in publishing, and she was occasionally thrown a manuscript to read, and she was never going anywhere in publishing. And she was starting to feel at 25 years old that she was never going to amount to much, and her family was helping her feel that way. So she started looking around and decided that tech was the place to go, and San Francisco was the place to go if you were going to get into tech. So away she went, and she wrote this wonderful memoir that it's kind of like, if you remember the book Generation X by Doug Copeland, it's a little bit like that, because it defines a generation, only part of a generation. I mean, the techie part of the generation, which I guess is a big part of the millennial generation, but it explained a lot of things to me that I didn't understand about the way things work in tech startups, and where does that money come from, and what do you mean that whole company goes on a ski trip, and you know, the kinds of things that happen now. And I was fascinated to find out about them. It was a New York Times notable book, and it received many other wonderful reviews. So if you want to get a little bit out of your comfort zone, as I did with this book, I think you'll enjoy it. And speaking of comfort zones, Outlawed is just really raking in the reviews like I can't believe. And it's just been made the second week on the New York Times list, which is awesome. So it's a gender bender, and it's women who are expected to just marry and produce children. And if they're not able to do that, they're considered freaks. So this woman, Ada, ran away and found a place where she could be accepted as she was, as she is. So it's been described kind of like The Handmaid's Tale meets Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which intrigued me. So so it's a feminist Western, basically. And So there you go. If you want to get out of your comfort zone or back into your comfort zone or wherever you are in your reading, you might love this. And I love that cover. It's just, to me, it's just crazy. And it's part of Reese's book club, which is another wonderful thing about it. So then Victoria Gosling has given us a wonderful new mystery. And so it says, come for the missing person mystery and stay for the existential ennui. That was Kirkus, which is, if all of you don't know, is a wonderful reviewing vehicle that Booksellers uses, kind of a Bible for where to go. Anyway, so it's character driven and a bunch of friends who get together and the ground kind of shifts and under their feet, and looks great. And I love that cover. The cover's enticing too. I'm a cover person, can you tell? Anyway, and that was available now. And Summer Water is one of those great little quick reads by Sarah Moss. And Hilary Mantel gave that a wonderful review, which I love. Sharp, searching, thoroughly imagined. Summer Water is utterly of the moment, placing its ancient human dots against a vast, indifferent landscape. I mean, really, with its wit and verve and beautiful organization, it throws much contemporary writing into the shade. Throws shade on contemporary writing. Well, that's pretty cool, Hilary. Anyway, great little book, great little book. And I don't know if I can read my, oh, well, I guess I can't. Anyway, I had another review there that's not showing up. Okay, so next is a book of poetry by a somewhat local poet. He lives in the Catskills in Vermont, and he's written a poem which is in the next slide. I won't read the whole poem, even though I'm tempted to do it, because it gives you so many thought pictures. So from God of Nothingness is the poem Wunderlich. The name means odd, the name means queer. It can denote an odd fish. It suggests a queer chap. Sometimes it means capricious. It can also mean peevish. It's a synonym for singular. It is thought to be poetic. The Pied Piper of Hamelin was called Ein Wunderlicher Haus, and his wonderful clothing came to pipe the rats away. Wonderful, colorful clothing. He drowned them in the Weisser, or so the stories go. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right. I never took German. When the mayor withheld payment, he took the children and drowned them with the rats, or perhaps they went to the mountains or they moved to Transylvania. It is 100 years since our children left, says the crumbling book found in the church. That is what it means to be a Wunderlich. And I also like, it can mean he has a gnome tattooed near the hair beneath his arm. And for that, I got my gnome down to show you. And I don't know, can you imagine a gnome right there? I can't imagine. Anyway, and it means make sushi out of spam. It means curious, as in he bought a haunted house. It means he loves the color orange. And in the end, this is really about him. It is true, there are a few of us that we spread ourselves thin around the globe. Find us making wine in Hungary, herding cattle in Namibia, captaining a ship somewhere off the Chilean coast. My Wunderlichs steamed up the long brown Mississippi in a boat that put them and their peculiarities off in Wisconsin, where the name means a shady farm growing a crop of moss on a roof. An old man with a pistol in his pants, a child who didn't survive and occupies a pagan's ashy grave atop a limestone bluff, where the wind speaks his strange name, or worse, voices recognition, an attribution, or a curse. I love all of those thought pictures. Anyway, so, and if you have a book club, if you don't usually do poetry, this might be a good one to do, because there are so many things to dissect and think in his poems in this book. Okay, and then on to, oh boy, this is fun, because I'm smack in the middle of doing Artist's Way. I'm in my 30th day, and it's the first time I've ever stuck it with anything for so long. So it's the newest book from Julia Cameron, author of The Artist Way, and she really does. What's the word? Well, anyway, I can't think of it. She really does teach you how to unearth all of your personal oppressors, so to speak, and your personal censors, so that you can allow your creative self to come forth. And I'm sure in the listening path, we're going to find the same kind of gentle and sure leading to being able to listen to others, which I think is very important right now for us to learn how to listen to others and understand others. And I think that this book will help us do that. And then being Ram Dass. Well, so I think we know who Ram Dass is. He's been around a long time. And I actually, when we announced that we were publishing this book, this is his last book, he's passed away. I unearthed my copy of Be Here Now, which I got in Berkeley on Telegraph Ave, that I paid $3.33 for. That was a lot of fun to find that. So anyway, so where are my notes? Oh, there. He began as a cigar-smoking Harvard prof and ended up a world-renowned spiritual leader. The stories of his meeting with other intuitive thinkers and luminaries is worth the read. And another generation-defining book, because that whole 60s, well, really 50s, 60s, 70s, Ram Dass and the people that he was in orbit with were a major part of our thought processes, and for some of us, our development. So that, I think, is, he was an awesome guy. So, okay, now I'm pivoting somewhere far away from that, with Ndedi Okorafor, yes, I did say it right, yay, good girl, with Remote Control. And this is the daughter of the Angel of Death, which sounds, you know, but she is such a talented writer, so talented. She's won every award there is to win. She's in science fiction and fantasy. She's had profiles on NPR and in the New York Times. She has a wildly popular TED Talk that you can find about Afrofuturism and science fiction, which is a thing. And the next slide explains her look at Remote Control is science fiction of the African futurism strain that knows aliens exist, quietly shows how technology is influenced by culture. Yeah, how about that? Features a powerful yet deeply pained female protagonist and wonders about the role of corporations in rural Africa. What? Anyway, so it's a novella, and walking with a Ghanaian girl who quickly understands her entitlement. You can look around, smell the palm trees and dust, and like Guillermo del Toro's masterpiece, Pan's Labyrinth, one of the author's favorite films, Remote Control dances above the lines between young adult and adult without a care. This novel will sink into your skin like the purest shea butter. So she likes her novel, which is really good. I think an artist should like her own work. So she also did something, she did a series of books that started with Binti, which has been a really popular read for a lot of people. So I recommend her if you want to, if you're a science fiction reader, especially, but if you're not, it's a good place to go to try something new and thought-provoking. So speaking of thought-provoking, Yang Jixing has written a second book. The first was Tombstone, which talked about the Great Chinese Famine and was widely reviewed and accepted in academia. And so this also, the Cultural Revolution, the Chinese Cultural Revolution was, of course, a major political event, which, oh boy. And aren't we just tired of those? Can't we just live? Anyway, so he's wonderfully reviewed, and I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry, my voice is getting tired. But at any rate, if you love history and you love world history, I highly recommend the world turned upside down. And the translator is renowned as well. Okay, and then we have Andre Asseman's Homo Aurelius, which is essays and really writing essays. So about writing and artistic thought processes and that kind of thing. So subway poetry, I love subway poetry. I may never ever see any again, but I used to love it when I get on the subway. So lots of interesting works that he dissects. And so in linguistics, Aurelius moods are the main set of grammatical moods that indicate that a certain situation or action is not known to have happened at the moment the speaker is talking. So there you go. And next is craft. Boy, this is one freaking, excuse me, one beautiful book. I love this book. It's it has black and white illustrations throughout, and one I can get there. I think I can. Yeah, one color in illustration insert. But this book is definitely going to be my next read. Definitely mine. I'm a maker and a crafter, and so to get this kind of academic take on crafting and how indigenous and African American peoples basically kept craft alive in this country, as well as women. We learn a lot about American history through craft, basically. And well, look, Paul Revere is right on the cover and his smithing. So let's see, what do they say? A rich chronicle of craft in America from Jamestown to the present day. Adamson leads us on a chronological journey through American history, pointing out along the way, sometimes in lush detail, the various craft movements and ideas that were prominent at certain times. The text swarms with interesting anecdotes and names, some well-known and others who will be less familiar, thoroughly researched and written with passion and a bit of a bite. And that's the Kirkus starred review. And it's also just received a marvelous New York Times review. They went crazy for it. So, and a Hudson Valley author, which is even more fun. How am I doing? Am I going over? No, I'm good. Okay. And then let's lighten up a little. So now we have The Narrowboat Summer by the author of Meet Me at the Museum. And so two women take off and get on a narrowboat with another woman in England and spend their summer getting to know each other and having some adventures on the canals of England. And I think this is a wonderful escapist way to escape the doldrums of winter and look forward to summer and a brighter time in our lives. And I love that sweet watercolor on the cover. I love that. And oh, speaking of rave New York Times, and Oprah liked it, Oprah magazine. If you like your memoirs intense, interior, and drama-filled, this is for you. So, Tove Ditlevsen was born in 1917, and she had to leave school early. She was taken advantage of, abused, you know, as a woman, a young woman abused, and but managed somehow to corral her intellect and started writing memoirs. And the first one was Childhood, in 1967, and all of these are available. You can either purchase it all at once and dive right into her life, which actually I would recommend, but you can also get them. Childhood was her first one from 1967. Youth was from 1967 as well. And then Dependency, probably the hardest to read, was from 1971, which is about her her addictions. She was married 4 times and had a difficult life, to say the least. Difficult life. So there you go. But the New York Times just gave it a rave. And I don't know what I did with it, or I read it to you. I don't know. So, oh Lord. Okay, pivoting again. The first Greg Hurwitz that I read was called Orphan X, and that was it. I was in love. You know, I've read every single one of them, begged the editors for the manuscript as soon as they come out of the computer. And I absolutely love this guy's writing. He's just so smart. And then I had the opportunity to meet him online, and he's brilliant. He's so high energy. I was exhausted by the time he was done. And he writes, he's always got 3 or 4 things going, screenplays, whatever, in his mind. And he's actually writing a Netflix series based on Orphan X, who is also the Nowhere Man. So don't get confused. Orphan X, there's this government program where they adopt orphans and teach them to be super agents. They give them a whole ton of money, and they can have whatever they want. Basically, it's a bank account open to them, and so and as we find out through the books, and each book gets more and more sophisticated and interesting and of the time. And this one is the Orphan X becomes the most. It's the most human story. And there was one scene I literally was on the floor laughing. Once you get to know Orphan X and you get to this book, and and he makes you laugh, and it's just kind of unusual for him to do that. But if you love a good thriller, this guy really whatever the word is, delivers. That's the word I was looking for. He really delivers. And then I'm clicking to add text. Oh God. So The Mask Falling is actually the 4th book in the Bone Season setting, but I'm talking about it because this series of books is being compared to Tolkien. So anyone who wants to immerse themselves in a fantastic fantasy series, this is one that I would highly recommend to you. Let's see. USA Today invokes the tyranny of George Orwell and the myth-making of J.R.R. Tolkien. Cool. And then Booklist, another reviewer that booksellers depend on, keenly imagined, atmospheric, and unnerving. Once again, the predicaments are complicated, suspenseful. The new and returning characters are intriguing. For all its superbly choreographed action and paranormal inventiveness, this is, at heart, a gripping tale of love and trust, valor and sacrifice, equality and justice. Sounds pretty intriguing to me. So there you go. Start at the beginning with The Bone Season, which is in paper, by the way. So Jane Harper is another author that just keeps getting better and better and better. She's an Aussie author, and The Dry is one of my favorites ever, her first book that we published with her. So here are some reviews for her. Ms. Harper is not one to drop a fact without using it later. If you enjoy being hoodwinked, You'll love Miss Harper's sleight of hand. Miss Harper has made her own major mark, and that's from the New York Times. And then Chicago Tribune, Harper's again raised the bar for emerging crime writers. I don't know that she's emerging. This is her first book. I think she's made it. And then from the Times Book Review, book by book, Harper is creating her own vivid and complex account of the Outback, which I think we're all fascinated by. So highly recommend Jane Harper and her Australian mysteries. Oh, here we go. So now I'm going into young adult and children's. And The Angel of Greenwood is a fictionalized account of the burning down of the African American Wall Street in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It's a history, it's fictionalized, obviously. Randy Pink has had a couple of books with us, Into White, where the Black character wishes that she were white and it happens and all the consequences of that. And then her other was Girls Like Us, which is young women who become pregnant at a very young age and are suddenly mothers and how they deal with that. But this is a love story between two people, a beautiful love story between two people who survived this horror that happened there. And I did put this brand new NPR quote. Let me see, I can move it over a little bit maybe. Anyway, the romantic love in Angel of Greenwood is big and beautiful and pure. And beyond the love between two teenagers, there's a deep love of community and home. I hope teachers assign this in schools and librarians turn it face out on the shelves. And the underlining is mine. American kids need to know this history to be good citizens. Period. End of story. So this should also be faced out on bookstores, bookshelves, and people should have it to read, both adults and children, I think, young adults and children. Oh, and then here we are with the pandemic. And it's a picture book about having to live inside when you used to live outside. And the pictorial story that's given is excellent, where there's, you know, a busy street outside and the next thing you know, the street is empty. And one of the booksellers, hang on a second, one of the booksellers said, this picture book is the first pandemic book for kids to cross my desk that feels relatable and on point. I think it communicates the reality and emotionalism of the global pandemic in a way that makes it really easy to understand for kids of all ages. And the illustrations are so charming and beautiful. I totally agree. When I read it, I just felt seen. So I have to expect that others, especially essential workers, will connect to it and feel that way too. I think Outside Inside is going to be the book that librarians, teachers, and parents will want, both for its beauty and poetry, and to really help kids process the events of 2020. I couldn't have said it better, but it's just a wonderful, wonderful picture book. How am I doing? I have a minute. Okay. Oh, so The Night Country is the follow-up to Hazelwood, which I adored, which was called creepy, but I didn't find it creepy. I just found it fantastical and magical, and loved it a whole bunch. So for Hazelwood book list start review, what Albert renders on the page is audacious. With resounding success, she keeps a firm grip on her characters and their stories, and her prose weaves a magic of its own, animating the ever-expanding fantastical premise through lyrical language, striking metaphor, and a mastery of tone. Well, you know, that sounds awfully, awfully dry for a book that I loved and was fascinated with the story. But I totally, totally recommend her work, Hazelwood. Start with Hazelwood. Okay, Gone to the Woods, Gary Paulson. He's telling his story in the woods, from which he got all of his stories for his books. So this is his biography. And or his memoir, I should say, adapted from a previous book, but and there are some situations you probably don't want to give this to young middle graders. You probably want to start with young adult and adult, I think would be fascinating. People who have read him when they were young. And this particular person said, even though Paulson is known for his adventure and survival stories, his descriptions of food are mouthwatering, and those passages were some of my favorites. His descriptions overall are fantastic because they are so vividly depicted for the reader to envision. So there you go. Another wonderful read. Oh, What's the Matter, Marlowe? This is a little bit different on a take on losing your companion, your pet. And I love it because they're best friends and they do everything together, only Marlowe is so upset that he won't even speak to his best friend. And I love the way that the artist has depicted it fades to black, because when you have such pain, your life becomes black. You're in your head, all you do is feel the pain of your heart. And so that illustration that makes it just keep blacking. And anyway, I think it's great for a kid who's just lost a pet. And I'm gonna speed up a little bit here. The comeback is our author and editor, E.L. Shin, who was a figure skater, and she knows from what she speaks, from which she's, whatever it is. Anyway, she was originally from Lake Placid. She's a Barnard grad, and this is a middle grade story of becoming a figure skater, yes, but also overcoming jealousy, which is a good lesson to learn, I think, set in a wonderful story. And I don't know why kids like these, but they really do. They like these horrible things. So at any rate, this character has the ability that her grandmother had to just devour people. And she has an opportunity to lose that ability. And does she take it? Does she not? You have to read it to find out, but what an enticing cover. And the first in a duology from Leigh Bardugo. This one has Grisha in it, which is her famous series. So now available in trade paperback. And I just want to say a couple of words about a book that that we are at Macmillan extremely excited about coming up. It's going to be on sale March 16th. It's basically a murder mystery for young adult set in the Ojibwa world. And at any rate, they're saying it's Veronica Mars meets Tommy Orange. So there you go. It's a thriller and coming up, and I think you're going to want to read it. That's all. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks so much, Ellen. That was fantastic. All right, we've got one left, and from Hachette Book Group, it's Katrina Kruse. Please take us away, Katrina.
Hi, thanks. So I'm going the opposite of Ellen. I'm starting with my youngest books and going to adult books. So the first book I'm going to talk about is Spring Stinks, which is a Ryan T. Higgins picture book, but it's a 7x7 size. So it's kind of the next phase up from a board book. It's perfect for fans of Mother Bruce board books. And if you don't know who Bruce is, he is like the grumpiest bear on the face of the earth. And he's got a unibrow and nothing makes him happy. So in this book, we have this Ruth the bunny, who is so excited to share the smelly springtime smells that are out there. Obviously, they don't live in a place where there's mud season. You just go straight from winter to spring. But what does Bruce think of all these smells? Well, you can only imagine. He's just grouchy and he thinks they all smell really terrible. New flowers, who needs those? Those of you who are familiar with Ryan's work will cheer on this short episode in the story, and you will have met Bunny Ruth in his Bruce's Big Storm book. And if you're new to Bruce, you're in for such a hilarious treat. He's just so grouchy that you have to love him. Next up, I have a book called Hollowpox. And Hollowpox is actually the third book in the Nevermore series. The first book was Nevermore. The second book was Wondersmith. They are both available now in paperback. And I would actually suggest that you start reading on book one and make your way up through it. Fox just bought the movie rights to the first book, Nevermore. This is a series that contains a really strong mix of, say, the Mysterious Benedict Society and the Harry Potter series. They're fast-paced, the plots are great. It's a new take on magic, but I will also say it feels very inspired by Harry Potter, but in no way does it feel derivative of Harry Potter. So in Hollowpox, the book, a strange and frightening illness has taken hold over Nevermore, which is the land where this all takes place in. And it turns infected Wunimals are part animal, part human, into vicious animals who are on the hunt. And as the victims of the Hollowpox, the disease, multiply, panic spreads throughout the area. And so Morgan Crow, our hero, realizes she has to save the city she loves, even if it puts her and everyone else in Nevermore in danger. I also have to just give a shout out. The audios for these books are so good that when we got the manuscript for Hollowpox, I really wanted to read it, but I actually held back to listen to the audios because the voicing is so good. I miss being able to go on long car trips because just listening to one of these is joy unknown. It brings me into the world and it makes me giddy. I cook dinner listening to it and shoo my family away. It's actually really sad. I'm like, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I just want to listen to this book. Next up, I have The Inheritance Games. This is by Jennifer Barnes. It published in September. It's a $17.99 hardcover. This book really appeals to fans of the movie Knives Out. It's a young adult book, but middle graders can read it because there's nothing really horrible in there. But also adults can read it. It's so fun. So Avery Grams has a simple plan for her future. It's to survive high school, win a scholarship, and get out of town. She certainly doesn't expect to have somebody ring her bell and tell her that she's been named in the will of Tobias Hawthorne, a wealthy man who she's never met and never heard of. But it soon becomes clear that not only was he wealthy, but he was the richest man in Texas. And he didn't just leave her a little bit. He left her basically almost his entire fortune. She has no idea why. And there is one catch to this. She has to live in Hawthorne House, his manor house, and live there for 1 year. It's filled with secret passages and puzzles and booby traps. And she has to not only survive all of that, but also his sons, who all thought they were going to inherit this fortune, live there as well. So she has to make her way through this crazy world and survive. I'm so excited. The sequel comes out this September. So once you read this, you'll be ready to move on to the next one. Next up, I have Race to the Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is just come out in paperback. It's middle grade. It published on January 5th in paperback. It's $7.99. This is part of the Rick Riordan Presents series. And the goal of that series is to publish great middle grade authors from underrepresented cultures and backgrounds, to let them tell their own stories inspired by mythology and folklore. if anybody's read Rick Riordan, he's great at telling stories based on mythology. And he was super when it was Greek and Roman, and he was okay when it came to Egyptian. But then he realized, I can't really tell these stories the way I want to when it's not my own mythologies that I know so well. So he went out, he wants to let authors tell their own stories and help them reach a bigger audience. So Rebecca Roanhorse may be known to some of you. She is a Black Native American writer who writes adult speculative fiction, and this is her middle grade debut. And so this is based on Navajo mythology about a young girl who discovers she's a monster slayer. She's in the 7th grade and she realizes she can detect monsters, and she sees her father's boss sitting in the stands at a sporting event, and she knows he's not right. She knows that there's something going on. So she and her brother and a friend, they go to figure it out. And then the next day, her father disappears. And all he did was leave behind a note that says, "Run." So they are thrust into this rescue mission, and they need to ask for the helps of the holy deities and there are all sorts of people in disguises, but they know they have to do this and pass these tests. And if they can do it, they will be able to be given the clues to defeat the ancient monsters. All right, switching gears. I don't know about you, but tons of people I know spent way too much time during this pandemic watching The Office. And so we have The Office trivia kit and episode guide. This comes in a little 3.5 by 5.5 box. And it includes a little book which summarizes all the episodes of The Office. And then there are also 200 Office trivia questions, so you can go on a Zoom and play with your friends and all of that. I was shocked to hear that 2020 was the 15th anniversary of The Office coming on television in the United States. So, you know, lots of people are doing this, and it's just a lot of fun. I'm seeing lots of reorders of that. Okay, I apologize in advance. This is the only time I'm going to be swearing during my presentation, but I can't get around that. I have Shit Actually by Lindy West, who you may know from Shrill. The subtitle is The 100% Objective Guide to Modern Cinema. This came out in October. It's $27. So in 2009, while Lindy West was the in-house movie critic for The Stranger, she published a merciless takedown of Sex and the City 2, lamenting it as a very long, catastrophically inept, pseudo-feminist money grab. Within 24 hours, that review had gone viral, her first national and international hit. Even Roger Ebert was tweeting about it. Something in the combination of her feminist analysis and her just exasperation with people, especially women. They were tired of movies being written for them by men as a way to capture all the nuances of modern women. So in this book, she turns everything we thought about film criticism on its head. And she goes out and she watches beloved cult classics. So big anthologies of film criticism tend to be about things we've already determined to be capital G, great, infallible masterpieces. But this book doesn't talk about those films now. It looks at the fallible masterpieces, the complete trash, or as she calls them, trashterpieces. From Animal House to Austin Powers, Dirty Dancing, Star Wars, What Women Want, and even the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She combines her razor-sharp wit and her humor and her love of trashier pieces to show us that we can rewatch our favorite films even when quotes and characters don't stand up well against the test of time. She shows us how to straddle our delicate line between celebrating and criticizing the movies that have defined our lives up to this point. We're living in a time, she says, we're living in a time when it feels impossible not to be political, but it also feels so effing heavy all the time. This book is about laughing at the things we love and not letting them off the hook. And to that end, this book is laugh out loud funny. So if you have a beverage by your side while you're reading this book, really swallow it and then go back to reading, because I have heard of people just spewing out their beverages while they are laughing so hard. Speaking of beverages and the pandemic, I have Shake, Strain, Done, Craft Cocktails at Home by J.M. Hirsch. He is the editorial director of Milk Street. This is a $20 hardcover. We are currently out of stock. We ran out of stock well before Christmas. It published in November. But the good news is stock is due back in mid-February. So you can order it, and Northshire, I'm sure, will get it out to you. After 10 months in the pandemic, are you done with generic gin and tonics, mediocre Manhattans, and basic martinis? You can use pantry staples and basic liquors to produce more than 200 game-changing craft cocktails worthy of the seat at any bar. And Lord knows people have been drinking way too much during this pandemic, but we are still probably going to be drinking. So if you can shake, strain, and stir, turn on a blender, you can make great cocktails. There are no hidden secondary recipe lines in here, no mysteries, and no fancy equipment needed. Every drink is rated by characteristics. It's warm, it's refreshing, it's sweet, it's bitter, it's strong and smoky, to help you understand and choose drinks you will really like. So these are drinks with sophistication, like a high-end speakeasy, like the Sazerac 2.0, a spice cabinet update to the classic, a new white Russian that lightens the load with coconut water instead of cream, a scorched margarita that uses the broiler to char lemons and limes that go into it, a gin and tonic with black pepper as the star ingredient, and the Pooh Bear, butter, honey, and bourbon. What's not to love for some people? Next up, now that we've got our drink, I strongly suggest we settle in with The Best of Me by David Sedaris. This came out in November. People love David Sedaris. His stories and essays span his whole career, but this is the first time he himself has chosen an anthology. And there is one unique essay in here that has never been published. For more than 25 years, Sedaris has been carving out his unique literary space, creating his own genre. A Sedaris story may seem like a confessional, but it's also highly attuned to what's going on in the outside world. It opens your eyes to the absurd and moving about our daily existence, and it's almost impossible to read without laughing. I have to say, every Sunday I'm on a Zoom trivia game with friends in the UK, and I said, "Oh yeah, we've got a David Sedaris book," and I knew they'd have heard of him, but that went into half an hour talk about how much everybody loved David Sedaris, and they're like, "Please tell me his tumor stories in there, or please tell me his Fitbit stories are in there." He's a joy to read. Okay, changing gears yet again, in the words of Ellen. We had one amazing surprise hit of the holiday season. It published in November, and it again went almost immediately out of stock. And it was Clanlands. I think it's because it had men in kilts on the cover, personally. But the subtitle is Whiskey Warfare and a Scottish Adventure Like No Other. It's by Sam Heenan and Graham McTavish, who you may recognize from the show Outlander. And for many people, I have heard that Outlander was the reason to have a Stars subscription. So from their faithful camper van to boats, kayaks, bicycles, and motorbikes, join the Stars as they road trip with a difference, as two Scotsmen actually go and explore their own country. It's filled with raw beauty and poetry, feuding, music, history, and warfare. Their journey begins in Glencoe in the heart of Scotland. It travels all the way up to Inverness and the Culloden battlefield. I will say Culloden is always a special place for my family because my sister lives north of Inverness. And so we always had to take my dad to Culloden. But along the way, you experience adventure and Highland characters and it's friendships and lots of whiskey, and there are lots of whiskeys up in the Highlands, and that's a good thing as well. And so it's a fun exploration of the country, and it's a great way in this time when we can't travel to kind of travel because they bring the country alive, and it makes you feel like you're somewhere else than your living room or your bedroom. All right, next up is a book that came out in November, and it's called We Keep the Dead Close by Becky Cooper. This is a $29 hardcover. And they say, you have to remember, he reminded me, that Harvard is older than the US government. You have to remember because Harvard doesn't let you forget. In 1969, Jane Britton, who was a 23-year-old grad student at Harvard in the anthropology department, and the daughter of the Radcliffe vice president, was found bludgeoned to death in her Cambridge apartment. Fast forward 40 years, Becky Cooper, our author, is an undergrad, and she hears the story about a young woman with no name, and she was told a Harvard student had an affair with her professor, and the professor had murdered her in the Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology. And because she threatened to talk about the affair, most of this is all false. But as the story unfolds, Becky Cooper just kind of followed it down the rabbit hole and spent 10 years trying to figure out what happened. It's a look at a world filled with male elites and the silencing effect of institutions and our compulsion to rewrite the history of female victims. This is really smart people's true crime. And just in an amazing happenstance, the author solves the mystery a week before the book is supposed to go to press. So they quickly do a rewrite just to fit in all of what happened. So if you've noticed, a lot of what I've talked about tonight has been lighter because I think during the pandemic, sometimes you need a little lightness. The next book I have is probably the heaviest book I'm going to talk about, but it's really important. It's called Mediocre by Ijeoma Oluo. And she wrote So You Want to Talk About Race, which is probably the best book I have read on race relations. And this is a subversive history of white male authority and identity in the United States. So we know that much of this country has been built on the dominant white man, but she goes in with sharp wit and she exposes why white male identity is not only blatantly marks our divided culture today, but has throughout history. For even men who are civil rights activists or male feminists, she says the glorification of white male aggression behind the Western expansion, the disdain of women workers strengthening in the Great Depression. She looks at racial integration driving the Great Migration and other examples of how white male America has forged and reinforced this feeling at all sorts of horrible costs. She doesn't what's nice about this book is she's not saying it's, you know, she's not saying it's their fault 100%. It's looking at the way things are and how we can make things better and taking it systemically. I know this is hard to believe, but on January 1st, The Great Gatsby entered the public domain. It is no longer under copyright. And so you will see a lot of Great Gatsbys out there. This is not The Great Gatsby. This is Nick by Michael Ferris Smith that came out January 5th. And he pulls up the Nick Carraway character out of the shadows and puts a spotlight on him. And I'm looking at Nick's life before Gatsby, before he moved to West Egg and into Gatsby's periphery. He was at the center of a very different story, one taking place along the trenches and deep within the tunnels of World War I. Floundering in the wake of destruction, he witnessed firsthand. Nick delays his return home, hoping to escape the questions he cannot answer about the horrors of war. Instead, he embarks on a transcontinental redemptive journey that takes him from the whirlwind Paris romance doomed from the very beginning to the dizzying frenzy of New Orleans, rife with its own flavor and debauchery and violence. It's an epic portrait of a truly singular era and a sweeping romantic story of self-discovery. This is rich and imaginative. It breathes new life into a character that many know, but few have really thought about deeply. It's charged with enough alcohol, heartbreak, and profound yearning to paralyze even the hardiest of Golden Age scribes. And Nick reveals the man behind the narrator who has captivated readers for many decades. Michael Ferris Smith is a Southern writer. He hasn't necessarily found his footing up here in the North, but I think this is the book that might actually help do that. Next up comes a book that came out in paperback on the 5th. It's a $15.99 paperback. I know there is Northshire love for Enter the Aardvark. This is a story that should not work, but it does. You have a Reagan-obsessed gay congressman, a Victorian taxidermist, suicide reincarnation, and a soulful stuffed aardvark. One day the congressman gets a delivery, and inside that delivery is a giant taxidermied aardvark. You never know where this book is going to go. It then goes back to the Victorian era, and we meet the taxidermist, and then we meet the man who discovered the aardvark. It ties everything together. It's a ghost story. It's a love story. It's political satire. It is a short read. It is a great read. I highly recommend it. And now that it's in paperback, it's even an affordable read. And then I was just going to touch briefly on two books that are coming out shortly in paperback. One may seem like, oh, you don't even need to talk about it, but 28 Summers by Ellen Hildebrand. I kind of fell in love with this book. So a woman's son receives a deathbed instructions from his mother to call a phone number. And it's in the desk. And inside he calls, and he doesn't expect that the woman who's currently running for president's husband would answer, but that's who it is. And it turns out this man and his mother once a year get together to rekindle a fling that they had on Nantucket. And I think one of the things I loved about this book is that every chapter is a year of their relationship. And every chapter starts with what was important and happening in the world during that time. And I think it just gave such a fun sense of space. It was really, really nice. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have The Mercies by Karen Millwood Hargrave. This is a very different cover than was on the hardcover. This comes out February 23rd. It'll be $17.99. It was named one of the best books of the year by USA Today and Good Housekeeping. So it's historical fiction. It takes place in Norway in 1617, when 23-year-old Magnus' daughter stands on the craggy coast watching the sea break into a sudden and reckless storm. 40 fishermen, including her brother and father, are drowned and left broken on the rocks below. And this basically wipes out all of the men in this village that's really remote up near the Arctic Circle. And the women in this tiny Arctic town of Vardo must fend for themselves. 3 years later, a sinister figure arrives. He comes from the church. Absalom comes from Scotland, where he used to spend his days burning witches in the Northern Isles. And he brings with him his young Norwegian wife, Ursa. And she is both in awe of the power her husband wields, but is also really afraid of him because he is strong and violent. And then she comes to this village where the women are strong, but they're independent, and she's never seen anything like that. And a relationship builds between Ursa and Maren, and it's just amazing that to see how this all builds. And then the island is small and it's just cold and brought in, and but it reads beautifully. And this is actually inspired by a true storm that took place in the 1621 witch trials, not in Salem, Mass, but in Norway. And so you learn about this witch hunt is actually global, going on around the world. And it brings to mind questions of, like, why again are people threatened when women are strong and can take care of themselves? Is it sorcery? Is it power? I love this book. The writing is beautiful. I actually went to Norway last summer, and so this was my summer read to bring there, and I can't think of anything more perfect. So thanks very much. Thank you for taking your time on Inauguration Day to actually listen. It's been really nice.
Katrina, thank you so much. This is great. Ellen, Suzette had to leave earlier. Thank you all so much. I hope you got some new books to read. I know I have added a number of things to my list tonight. So everyone, good evening and have a great night. And for everyone at Northshire, thanks so much for attending. See you soon.
Thanks, Davies.
Thank you all. Thanks, Linda. Take care. Oh, and then my cat showed up for the first time.